Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel, Art Classes My Way. I have got my wax paper here and we're going to do a very simple polymer clay project. And this one's kind of inspired by the ocean. And I've got here, I've got Sculpty polymer clay. This guy is transparent. I know he doesn't look transparent when he's in the bag, but trust me, he is. Got a little ball there ready to go. This light blue color, he is also transparent. This is one of the things I like about that particular brand there, is just a little piece just pop right off. And then we have some Primo effects, which basically this is just a deeper blue, and effects means like, they call their effects stuff anything with like glitter or the clear or just about anything that doesn't just bake straight. So I'm going to just make myself a decent sized sliver. I want it to be about the same as the blue right there that I got. There we go. And what else you're going to need for this project? Gold leafing. It comes in pretty big bags. This is just the gold leafing itself minus the kit. Now that stuff will get everywhere, just keep that in mind. The quarter is to tell me what size I'm wanting these little medallions to be. This is going to be a simple set of earrings. And from here, I'm just going to start messing with my poly clay, because when you first start with it, it's going to be a little bit crumbly, a little bit yicky. But once it starts warming up in your hand, it starts warming up, moving around and everything like that, the easier it does end up becoming to deal with. Now when you go to store poly clay, you can wrap it up in a wax paper like this. Don't just put it in like a metal tin like this straight. It'll affect the chemicals that poly clay comes with. Sorry. And you can also just, if you can squish the whole bag to fit it into something like that as well. Just leave it in its own plastic that it comes in. That kind of helps it out quite a bit. That ought to do. Let's work with this deeper blue here. Alright, from here I'm going to rip my blue in half. And I just pretty much eyeball it. There are no, okay, well, it takes this much, and this much to make 2 sets of earrings or 5 sets of earrings. Because I've never really played with the effects. I played with Primo before, but I've not played with the effects part of it. So I'm going to make myself a test piece, and if the test piece turns out fine, then there's going to be no problems. But if I don't know how this glitter is going to react, but I'm going to just take these 2 pieces here and I'm going to mix them so that way I have an in between these 2 shades of blue color here. Now I'm not going to do that with this white so much, because I kind of want to get something a little bit different going on there. But you gotta make sure you mix this really good. Unless, you know, you might want that really cool looking little waviness, which is eventually what I want to do between all 4 of these. Alright, in between color there, I think I'm going to take just a pinch of this this clear, kind of transparent, and kind of mix him in there. And this is just me experimenting and playing around, and you guys are just along for the ride. Ah. And just kind of get this more in the middle of these 2. So I guess you're going to want a little bit to get a middle color. I guess a lot like paint. You want a lot less of the dark than you do the pale. Takes a lot less of the dark to make a big difference. So yeah, it's looking a lot closer. What I'm going to do, now you saw those really cool swoosh colors. Well, mush, mush, and mush. Here we go. Getting that in between color may not have ended up really factoring into this whole thing, but we will just see. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of flatten him down on this. Now do keep in mind, poly clay does have chemicals in it due to the fact that it is a, moldable plastic. It is essentially plastic. Kind of stuck my finger there. Make sure you get it out from under my nails. Now I'm just kind of squaring my edges up here. Not that you have to do it, but try to get a even surface all the way across. And of course a rolling pin would work way better, but I don't have a rolling pin for this. But by touch, that feels pretty good. Alright, now for the quarter. Now you can do this with an X-Acto knife, what have you. It looks like I will have enough to make 2 of these guys. And then we're just going to go around our quarter using it as a template. Of course, if you have like something like cookie cutters and whatnot, I'm jealous. And we're just going to make ourselves a fine little disc. And if your edges aren't 100% perfect, I would try to get them as close to perfection as you can get them. So that way it's less work for you in the future. But if you can't get these guys absolutely perfect on their edges, once you've baked them, you can go in here with a Dremel and just smooth out slowly, bit by bit, or even just having a sheet of sandpaper and just go and rolling it along that. That looks pretty good to me. Should have very minimal amount of work that I have to do with that. There's a couple of kind of pointy edges I would want to take care of. Now, I really like that area. I like this area too. So I think we'll just put it right there on that edge. And we'll see if I can't, how many of these little discs I can even make here. Make sure that our president isn't mushed into one particular side or another there. Just come around and kind of fix my edges. This feels very watery. Go ahead and just flatten this out almost, or we could get a quarter, or take the quarter and exchange it for something else, a nickel. I think I can get 2 more out of there. Yeah, indeed I can. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and take this guy and act like it's a whittling knife here. Be very careful if you're doing this in this particular kind of manner. Just because I'm stupid doesn't mean you have to be stupid. Actually, I've messed with knives my whole life. If this was something that had a lot more substantial weight behind it, or resistances behind it other than polyclay, I definitely would not be making that be going towards me. Make sure we don't have the White House in the other side. As far as I know, the White House isn't in the tropics now, is it? No. And just kind of smooth out. Smooth, smooth. those little areas right there, we can just lightly just rub them out and they'll smooth themselves right out. That's one of the greatest things about polyclay, that it's just so forgiving. Now let's see if we can't get this last little bit of really cool warpy white in there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to poke a hole through the tops, or where you decide the top is. I'm going to decide, you know what, the lightest part of the water is normally through here. So this is where my hole is going to be for a jump ring. And I would put it up here, but I don't want it to interfere with all that really cool water effect going on, so I'll just put it in the area that's a little less interesting. Now we got those guys done. Now I'm going to take my leftovers here, see if there isn't any more that I can make, because if we work this too much more, it's just going to blend really, really nicely, and we want this kind of swoosh and warping, and we want all that cool stuff to be there. So it's not going to take, ooh, I like that side. It's not going to take too much more before it's pretty much unusable. We might be able to get 2 more out of it, and then I can make tester earrings. And actually, if we scoot this, since this end ended up being pretty rounded, if we scoot that all the way there to the edge and then just warp it around there, just kind of move it around, tuck, 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 tuck. There, that'll give us enough room for another one over there. Can I get a dime out of this last little piece? I can if I finagle it. So I'm going to just kind of fold that inwards and fold this one around as well. Move my dime for a moment to make sure that those blend nicely. And just, it's a light rub. And unlike clay, you couldn't get away with this with clay. Because you'd have to make sure that there's no air gaps and everything else, and clay's a lot more finicky than poly clay is. All right. Actually, you know what? I see a thing. Why not just leave it the way it is? Pendant. Ideas, they evolve, they change, no reason to deny it. I want to make sure though that this end does not get too thin. Although that's not a problem you necessarily always have to worry about with poly clay versus regular clay. Regular clay, the thinner you get it, the more fragile it does become. And now we have just this teeny tiny little bit left. Didn't even need the dime. And now we can see that that's not got much life left ending. So this will be our test piece for throwing into the oven. I'll make him a little wider to make sure that we can see all the properties of what's going to go ahead and happen. Especially with the glitter part. That's the part that worries me the most anyway. Now, I've got a little bit of this gold leafing gold leafing's hard to mess with. It's a pain in the butt. So, and it likes to stick to a lot of things. Like, see that? So, just take little bits, touch it to parts of our projects, make it lay down a little more. Maybe not. Maybe it's just going to stick to me. So don't, just open one of these bags like real wildly, because this stuff will fly everywhere. Getting it back in the bag is a whole other story. There we go. Giving it a little bit of a roll in between your fingers actually breaks it up a little bit more, makes it a little smaller. A little bit more for some of these. There's not a whole lot of control when it comes to doing this part of it. It's kind of what sticks and what doesn't stick. Maybe I can, get some of that off. There we go. Put a little bit bigger piece on that one. Just lightly taking my fingernail across there and trying to scatter a little more. There we go. All right, now I'm gonna throw my tester piece into the kiln, which is actually just my toaster oven. I got an extra toaster oven at a yard sale, and it itself is not a very even toaster oven, but it does the job. So that's why I always put in a tester piece, and especially since this has got a poly clay that I've never played with before, so I will be back in a moment. So we can see how our test piece came out. The glitter, even in the burned edges, really, if I can get my camera to focus on it, there we go. The glitter wasn't even affected in the burned areas. I was really figuring that it would have been affected if it was accidentally left in there too long. This has been in there at 250 for 5 minutes, So, and it's a little bit thinner, so I dropped my toaster oven down a few degrees, and think it's time to pop these guys, which now my camera won't, there we go. Time to pop these guys in there. I'm going to put them in there with my wax paper, and I'll see you guys when they're done. And while this is going on, it's just 5 minutes. I plan to stand there and watch them. That's why I like the toaster oven so much. I can just sit there at that little window and watch to my heart's content and make sure everything is going perfectly fine. And if for some reason it's not cooking evenly in there, I can stop it at any moment and adjust and rearrange things. So I will see you soon. I ended up baking these at 230 degrees. I gave them a little longer than 5 minutes. After the first 5 minutes was over, I pulled them out, took a look at them. The white wasn't very transparent yet, so that meant that they weren't done. Pushed them back in for like another minute, pulled them back out, and kept doing that until the white was as I wanted. Now these are still extremely hot. Yeah, hot. It's not like messing around with like wax or molten plastic or anything like that. It doesn't like, oh, you touch it and now you're like screaming and trying to get it off your fingers. But it's hot, so be careful with it. I just pick it up by the paper. So I'm gonna let these guys go ahead and cool, and we'll come back. We are now ready for the next step, and since I don't have polymer cutters or little die cuts or the cookie cutter type things that a lot of poly clay people have, I'm just really starting out with poly clay. These guys, obviously, I took just a knife and went around them. They're not perfectly round by any means, so I got myself some sandpaper here. We got 80, and I'm just going to take these round guys and go around like this and rotating as well. Now I'm not pushing down too terribly hard while doing this, because you don't want it to take out great big hunks and put in great big grooves that are going to be a pain in the butt to sand out in a little bit. But this will help get it at least a little bit more uniform. It won't make it perfectly round unless I want to sit here and play with it to absolute perfection, but at least it'll get it all nice and even. Looks better. From there, after you do the 80, we have 120, and sandpaper is the lower the number, the more intense the grit typically is. So the 120, and we can kind of see how that's pretty rough along the edges there, but it did give us our shape much faster. Now you might want to think that, well, I'll just get the final evolution of the sandpaper part of this and just skip all these steps, and you can. That's valid. The only problem is that that's a bit of a pain in the ass, and it takes way longer to do it that way than it is to just get all the different kinds of sandpaper, or at least the different grits of sandpaper, and just go that route. Alright, scratches are a little finer. So, moving on to the next one. So this one is 180. Now just one pass around isn't going to get it done. You're going to at least make a couple passes. I mean, it's up to how much work you really want to do. I mean, if you don't want to do this part of it, then go and get the cookie cutters and all the different cutters and things. For some reason, when I got ready to start this, my local hobby places, they all decided that they weren't going to carry any of the polymer cutting stuff anymore, so that made it fun for me. And now for the last bit, which you can see I've used this before for this very purpose. We are 320. And that's looking so much better than where it started out at, which was kind of all wonky woo there. And if you want to, you could even, you know, flip him over on the back side and go ahead and try to make maybe the back side a little bit more even if you feel that that is necessary. Just knocking off some of the sanding parts that have come around the sides a little bit. Now, if you've put the gold leafing on the front, I would not recommend sanding it because you're just going to sand off your gold leafing at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and go around a few more times and get a lot of these guys done. I'll save this guy to show you after a bit, and I'll see you soon. Those guys are all done, so now it's time for that teardroppy shape. And I'm not sure that this one came out as well as everybody else. He kind of looks like he got maybe burned on the bottom. But anyway, this is a good time to show you guys a bit of reasoning why you want to go like this with your rounder parts of your poly clay, or the parts that you're trying to round, as opposed to going back and forth. Back and forth may be easier, but you also have the problem of dragging back and dragging back on its side instead of giving a nice clean cut. Now, if this is what you're looking for, then yeah, it's probably all right to do. It's a little harder to get that edge even. It's actually probably better to round the paper itself and then drag in the roundness as opposed to going back and forth like that. You get a nice and even that way. And that same goes for any straights that you have. It's easier just go back, you know, go back, like we have been. That way everything's a lot more uniform. So I'm gonna just do this teardrop here, and then we'll see how well it turns out. And then just shove all my sandpaper back inside of its little package. Now, you can buy sandpaper in multiples, like this has 80, 120, 180, and I got the 300 from somewhere else, and you know, being able to store them in this nice little package when you're not using it is pretty sweet. I'm going to run these guys under some water and clean them up super fast, and I'll be right back. At this point, I've got a bunch of head pins in these guys here, and you can see kind of where I'm going with this. So you're going to need, well, you don't necessarily need the chain nose, but I like using the chain nose for this because I can have a fairly small area, and because of the way they're shaped, as opposed to the round noses here. The round noses, they're not incredibly strong, and what I mean by strong is that they can be, the ends could end up doing this kind of maneuver. Not necessarily that the round nose is going to break, but because these guys are more like D-shaped, they have a little bit more strength to keep them from doing that. So I'm going to just kind of pick a little area. Now actually first I'm going to take the chain nose and I'm going to hold on to the end of the head pin, right where he goes into my poly clay here, and give that a squeeze so that way we can kind of rotate this guy upwards. And because poly clay is fairly soft, if we did that without that support, there's a good chance that that could have warped. And then I'm going to come in here and just give it a little squeeze with the end of the round nose, or the chain nose, holding on to the head of that pin, and then turning around and kind of just giving it a little squish, so that way that bends up nicely right there, nice and tight. And then from there I'm just going to select a little area up above, but not too much. Basically I'm going to want to fold it over like I have the rest of these guys here. And because of how we placed this earlier, that's not too terribly hard. You just give it a little bend and then a roll. Get that fairly tight, and you want it nice and straight right above the head of that pin. Now if it ends up going a little off, you can just grab a hold of about there and just give it a little twist, get it back into place. So pretty simple. Now from this point, it is pretty easy to do. So somebody gave me a whole bunch of jewelry making stuff, and I want to get it out of here and out of my way, so I'm going to start using it up and get it all gone. I don't know if any of it's nickel free whatsoever, so I won't be putting it up for sale as being nickel free. So I'm going to take a look at how that goes into the ear there. So I need my hoop to go this direction. So just take the round nose from there, give a little kink off into one side, go ahead and roll this guy around, and I'll roll him around to the front just a little bit there. That's not too big of a thing. I'll just give it a little nip. Go ahead and fix that. Make sure he is happy as clams. I'm going to make him a little bit more upright. Close that up a little bit, and then just roll him back a little bit. So that, since this one's the more tarnished one, I want to use the tarnished earpiece. I did it backwards. Oh well. Plenty fixable. Just close that back up anyway. And since I put that in wrong, because if it would go in the ear, it would actually be hanging sideways. Don't want that. Face forward. And then it's just a simple rotate, getting back where the more proper spot. And there we have it. Pretty simple little piece, simple little job to do, and just a fun little ocean theme going on, I feel, or tropic theme, what have you. Let's go ahead and make up the rest of these. And now we have this dude is all that's left, and I was thinking just turning him into a pendant just like this guy, but I want him to mirror these since he's pretty much the same size. I think that'll go pretty well together. So I'm going to go ahead and give him a little cut. You want to make sure to give it enough length that you think you can still make it round with your round nose. Or put a jump ring in there, one or the other. So, there we are. And there we have it. Pretty simple, easy little project. All these scraps are going to go in a different scrap pile. So I do hope you guys enjoyed this little video. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all those things that you wonderful people do. I do have an Etsy if you would like to donate and help keep me supplied in wire so I can continue to make these jewelry videos, and poly clay as well, and focal stones and whatnot, so that way we can all have a great deal of fun together. I also have a Patreon. You can do the same thing there. At least with the Etsy you can get something for your money. I do hope you all had a wonderful time, and yeah, thanks for coming and hanging out. Bye!